Good evening, my friends. Wherever you are watching from tonight, take a deep breath and sit with me for a moment, because what I am about to tell you is not a small event, not a normal disagreement, not a simple political issue. It is something much bigger, something that is shaking governments, troubling world leaders, and making powerful nations feel fear they have not felt in many years. Everything began with a single resource, not gold, not oil, not diamonds, but it is uranium, a metal that does not shine like jewelry, but shines with power, a metal that keeps whole countries alive, a metal that could decide the next 20 years of global power. And for more than 60 years, one place supplied it quietly, a land that has been poor for far too long, a land that watched its resources leave while its people stayed in the dark, the country of Niger. For decades, a French company took uranium from that land for a price so low that most citizens never saw even a small benefit. Villages lived without electricity, roads stayed broken, hospitals stayed empty. Children studied under trees because classrooms did not exist. And yet, uranium left the country in huge amounts, powering millions of homes in France, while homes in Niger stayed dark. But everything changed when a new military leader took control in 2023. He looked at the records, the contracts, the numbers, and he made a decision that would shake France, Europe, and eventually Russia. He said, "If this contract does not help my people, then it ends today." And France never expected this answer. The French company, Orano, was asked to leave the mining zone. The deals were canceled, their access was cut, and before they left, they still had thousands of tons of uranium stored inside the mine site. When Niger's government looked at the storage, they said something simple. "You took from us for decades, this is now our compensation." But France said, "No, that uranium is ours. It belongs to us." This argument was the spark that lit the fire. To protect its interests, France ran to the World Bank's court. The court ruled that Niger had no right to sell the uranium, no right to open the mines, no right to touch the stored material. They said the contract still belonged to the French company. But Niger refused that order. The military moved in. Soldiers blocked the mine from all sides. No trucks were allowed to enter. No French staff were allowed to return. The country stood firm, and then came the announcement that shocked the world. Niger said it was now in talks with Russia to sell 1,000 metric tons of uranium at full international market price. Russia agreed. No discounts, no tricks, no hidden demands. A clean business deal. For Niger, this meant money to build power stations, roads, and hospitals. For Russia, it meant a strategic connection in West Africa, but for France, it was a nightmare. Because France depends heavily on uranium for energy. More than half of France's electricity comes from nuclear power. Without steady uranium, French factories slow down, trains stop, homes go dark, and the French economy, already struggling, begins to shake. So suddenly, France made a threat. Not a mild warning, not diplomatic pressure, a direct military threat. France told Niger clearly, "Cancel the deal with Russia, or we will enter your land and take the uranium by force." This was not a small fight anymore. This was not business. This was the language of war. The news spread fast across the Sahel, but Niger was not alone. Burkina Faso and Mali stood beside it. All three countries spoke with one voice, saying they were ready to defend their land to the last man. These once quiet nations now stood with confidence, without fear, without bowing to foreign pressure. France did not expect this unity. Russia heard the French threat and gave a direct message of its own. The message was calm but strong. If France attacks Niger, Russia will respond. Suddenly, what looked like a local conflict turned into a global power struggle. Two world powers now stood on opposite sides of a dusty uranium mine in the desert. Russian teams arrived quietly, not soldiers, but engineers, planners, energy experts. They told Niger something Africa had wanted for decades, but never received from the West. Russia said, "We will help you build your own nuclear system, your own power plants, your own technology, your own energy future." For the first time, Niger could dream of electricity across the whole country, not just for the capital, not just for the elites, but for villages, schools, farms, and homes. Something France never offered in 60 years. And Russia did not stop there. They helped Niger begin planning weapons factories too. Factories to produce rifles, armored vehicles, artillery, and missiles, not to attack others, but to stop depending on foreign countries for defense. For years, the West had given rules to African armies. You cannot buy this weapon. You cannot have that equipment. You must wait. You must obey. So terrorists had better guns than soldiers. Now that era could end. And this is what France fears the most. If Niger learns to make its own weapons, if it builds its own energy, if it controls its own uranium, then it no longer needs France. And if Niger becomes fully independent, the whole region may follow. And if the region follows, France loses the foundation of its economy. This is why France is desperate. This is why it is angry. This is why it is threatening an invasion over a metal it once took for almost nothing. While France struggles, something else is happening inside Europe. The French economy is shaking. People are protesting in the streets over high costs, low wages, and rising debt. France has passed 3 trillion euros in national debt. Their industries are slowing. Their influence is falling. And they know that if they lose access to cheap African resources, the situation becomes worse, much worse. So the uranium in Niger is not just material. It is France's lifeline. While all this is happening, the people of Niger have not forgotten the past. They remember decades when their resources left the country while their children studied in broken schools. They remember promises that never came true. So when the International Court ruled against Niger, people did not panic, they did not fear, they did not lose hope. They simply said, "We decide our own future now." The tension today is growing. On one side stands France, angry, worried, and losing power. On the other side stand Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, united, calm, and ready to defend their land. Behind them stands Russia, waiting, watching, and preparing. If France sends even one soldier into the uranium zone, the Sahel Alliance will respond. Russia will support them. And what begins as a fight over a mine may become something far bigger, something no one truly wants. But this moment is not just about uranium. It is about the future of a whole region. For many years, powerful countries controlled African resources, controlled African markets, controlled African choices. But now, for the first time, these nations are standing tall and saying no. France knows what is coming. Russia knows what is coming. The Sahel knows what is coming. And now the whole world knows too. The next few weeks may shape the next few decades. A fight over sand and rock has become a symbol of freedom, pride, and dignity. A small country once ignored is now holding the attention of military generals, presidents, and global powers. This is not just a story about a mine. This is a story about a shift in global power. A moment where the weak are no longer weak, and the strong are no longer in control. Whatever happens next, this moment will be remembered. A storm is coming. Not of rain, but of change. The old world is shaking. A new world is rising. And the voices that were silent for long are finally being heard. Tonight, the world watches Niger, and Niger stands unafraid.